Okay, students, so I'm going to show you a Windows Forms version of Task 2. It's not a lot different, and you should really get used to doing things in Windows Forms rather than the console, but just so you can see in this particular exercise. Form 1 I renamed to Form Main because in a Windows Form application, main is a place where everything is kicked off for setting up the graphical user environment. So I named my Form 1 Form Main just to indicate that we're kicking off from there. Double click on the blank form and I get form load, and in this case form main load, and I simply start off with the allocation here. On the handout, in main it does this and then it does a read key. The read key is not something you want here in a graphical user environment. It is a console command, and as such we can just omit it. We start off with metals, and again I create each of these classes as a separate item over here. There's metals, there's steel company right here, okay, there's metals, and then there's automobiles. And one of the things that I really recommend when it comes to the handout is to find each instance on the left side of the item in the program there, and literally draw a line over top of the line that says class metals, and then the next one is class steel company. Draw a line over that one, and then class automobiles, and draw a line over that one, and then draw a line over main, so as to make it clear as to what each of them is, especially since it's easy to get confused as to what all of that is. It's all jumbled together like that. There's no indentation of things, so it's easy to get confused with that. And in automobiles, there's two colossal typos. Well, actually 3 colossal typos. This is form load, and it starts automobiles, and I just set up a variable called AAA, which doesn't make sense, right? And then said new automobiles Mercedes. Okay, so this is what would be down in main, and this would be in metals. Yeah, there we go. I have the class set up, and it says class metals. I added the word public in front of it to make sure that you understand that classes are generally, well, pretty much always public. And I added the word private in front of this string so that you understand that this is inside of the class and it is not visible anywhere else, just inside. Okay, and then again, this is public metals, and I believe it says that in the handout. And the reason for this is that this is the constructor. Okay, I don't write this in any of the others, but that's what it is. It's the constructor, and the constructor is public, so naturally the constructor has to be public as well. And if for any reason you got that mixed up, it would throw error message about that. Okay, so metals, the constructor takes in a single parameter, and that parameter is called, it's a string called, that they're calling type. Okay, so type is being put into underscore metal type, which was defined here. And what they're doing is they're taking this thing which was essentially passed in a public fashion and sticking it into a private variable. It's not absolutely necessary to do it that way, but it is a recommended method of keeping things completely hidden from other classes and so forth and so forth. Message box show, okay, and it prints out metal /t/t, not really necessary here, but it's fine. And then and again, that /t stands for tab. It's an escape sequence for tab. And then plus, and then the variable underscore metal type. We could have also just printed out type here, but we wanted to emphasize that we're printing out just the private variables within this class. Now again, we passed in a parameter, so when we go to the next class that is going to inherit from metals, it has to pass in that particular parameter. So I'm going to go to Steel Company now, which is the next one. Oh, one other thing before I move on to that. Since I'm using message box show here instead of the console write line, I have to put in using.windows.form. I make a mention of this in the comments up here, but I won't do it in the others. Just to be aware that messagebox.show requires that just as a write line would require console.writeline. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. Okay, so Steel Company. Again, System, Windows, Forms up here at the top. Now we're inheriting, Steel Company is inheriting from metals, and it's got its own little variable here, private variable named underscore grade. And then in the constructor, okay, again, this is the constructor, and this is a public class, so the constructor is public. And in the constructor, we are inheriting a variable called grade, and we are also referencing this back to metals because we're going to be passing this to metals. So one of those things here we see is base, and I want you to note that when I hover over base, what it says. That it says metals, dot metals, string type. And what it's saying is, okay, we inherited from metals, but when we're sending something back into metals, we need to specify that it is base. And as I said once before in one of the other videos, there's really only two things that it can be referenced by. It can be referenced by the word this, or it can be referenced by the word base. This is the current class that you're in, and base is the class that you're inheriting from. Okay, so in this instance, you're passing back some information to Steel, or passing Steel rather back to metals. Okay, so underscore grade comes in from whatever instantiated Steel Company, and it passes a grade in, and it goes to this underscore grade, which is a private variable. I write it out in message box, and again, very similar to metals, except that metals is the foundation, if you will, of all of the others. So Steel Company is inheriting from metals, and then metals, or Steel Company rather, will be the base of automobiles, which is here actually, and you can see it right here. Public class automobiles inherits from Steel Company, and private variable string underscore part, and then public automobiles string part. Okay, so automobiles is being passed in a value, and also we are referencing a value into steel company, and so we're passing steel or cast iron rather to steel company. Part comes in and is assigned to underscore part, and we're printing out underscore part with the message box. Now all of this gets triggered again back in form main when I say automobiles underscore equals or AAA equals new automobiles, and you'll see now we have the word Mercedes here. It's a parameter, and that parameter Mercedes is getting passed into automobiles as the part. Okay, and so when this prints out, this will print out part Mercedes, and then cast iron will be passed back to steel company. Steel company will print out grade cast iron and will pass back steel to metals. Okay, so steel comes in here in metals, is assigned to metal type, and it then is placed into here and printed out in this particular box. So if you were to run the program, first thing that comes up is from metals, and it says metal, steel, and then grade, cast iron, part, Mercedes. And then a blank form terminates the running of the program. Okay, so one thing about this that you sort of need to know is on form main, we instantiate automobiles. And again, automobiles contains everything backward, okay, starting with steel company. And it contains everything backward because steel company contains metals, and metals was the first one here. So when steel company was derived from metals, and then automobiles was derived from steel company, and then on main we instantiate automobiles with Mercedes. Okay, when you have something which is derived from a previous item, okay, so we'll go back to automobiles here. Automobiles is derived from steel company. Steel company is derived from metals. So when the item automobiles in form main is instantiated, it goes to automobiles. Automobiles says, oh, this came from steel company. Steel company came from metals. So metals is the first thing executed, and then steel company, and then automobiles, and then we're back to here, and then it is finished.